Yourself, Deanna, I'll get cracking over.
Right, good afternoon everybody, can you hear me? Good. I've been asked to step in as Guy is unable to be here, and I do that in the capacity as Vice Chair of Northumberland SACRE. I'd be very grateful if we could go round again. Some faces I know and some names I know, but I can't remember everybody. So I'm Deanna van der Velde, I'm Vice Chair of Northumberland SACRE, and I belong to the Orthodox Jewish community in Newcastle. Can we go along the front row here?
Yeah, hi, I'm Rebecca. I'm Democratic Services, so I'm just here to take a note.
Hello, I'm Dave Cookson. I'm Head of School Improvement with the Local Authority and Officer for SACRE.
Hello, I'm Caroline Weir. I'm the advisor to Northumberland SACRE.
I'm Claire Curtis, I'm from Mowbray Primary School.
Which school, sorry?
Mowbray.
Mowbray, right, thank you.
I'm Joyce Miller, representing Buddhists in Northumberland.
Hello, Chris Hudson, Church of England, Diocese of Newcastle.
Councillor Les Bowman, County Councillor for Hollywood Ward.
Hello, Stuart Deal of North East Humanists.
I'm Nick Morfitt, I'm County Councillor for Humsoft Ward.
You need to speak up a little bit, I couldn't hear you.
Beg your pardon. I'm Nick Morfitt, County Councillor for Humsoft Ward.
Thank you.
Ted Marley, representing the United Reformed Church, Methodist and Presbyterian and the Baptist churches at the moment until we find replacements for those two.
Hello, Paul Rusby, representing the Church of England.
Thank you. Right, if we can look at the minutes of the... oh, sorry, apologies for absence.
Yes, Chair, we have apologies from Councillors Wenner Thompson and Councillor Thorne. We also have apologies from Mrs Cousin and back to you, Rasa.
And Mrs Cousins, I think, represents the Catholic Church.
Yes.
Thank you. If we can have a look at the minutes of the last meeting, which unfortunately I couldn't attend. Oh, that's Andrew Duffield.
Yeah.
Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you.
If you could just introduce yourself to the others who possibly don't know you.
Of course, Andrew Duffield. I'm a middle school teacher at Berwick Middle School.
Thank you. We're using the microphones because I have difficulty hearing, so I could hear you fine.
Do I need to press anything?
The right-hand button?
Either button.
Either button. Either button, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, a lot of the stuff that's in the minutes will come in under matters arising. Does anybody have any queries about page 2?
Yeah, I did offer apologies for non-attendance at the last meeting on the 28th of November, and it's not recorded.
That's Ted. And the arrangements for the newsletter, I think, is going to come up again, isn't it, Dave?
Yes, it will.
And the action plan. So, anybody got any comments for page 3? And page 4. Have we? I keep losing my minutes. My agenda. Where's the agenda, Rebecca? Oh, it's on the back side. Sorry, excuse me. can I just make a comment about Holocaust Memorial Day? I appreciate that possibly you had to do things at the very last minute, as did all the local authorities. And I don't know how many of you looked at the video, which I did. And I was just a bit perturbed that it was purely the council members who did a presentation, and there wasn't any involvement with schools. So we don't have a lot of knowledge as to what the schools have done, and I don't know that we can find that out. I'm involved in Newcastle and North Tyneside, and again, I help out with the Catholic diocese. And again, it was very much you had to have a plan B, and some of the plan Bs had to go in very, very quickly within a fortnight or 10 days. And I think perhaps in future years, if Northumberland doesn't have the capacity, I'm willing to be involved, and it might be good to work with the Newcastle and North Tyneside, because for the past 2 years we've actually had a song specifically written for the theme, which we shared with North Tyneside, and there is a coordinator for the music. I don't know whether Northumberland's involved in that. And I can't remember his name, I'm sorry. But you could find that out from Georgie Biddle, who I know of as one of the coordinators. And it would just be nice to see children involved, or pinching one of the speakers from the other groups. I mean, it is very, very difficult now to get actual survivors, because if any of you watched the programme of the portraits, they're well into their 90s. But there are people like myself who are second generation that, you know, could do a recording for you. So I'm glad something was done, but I would have liked to have seen a bit more involvement. And I know it's difficult for you, Dave, but just for future reference. I don't know whether anybody else wants to say anything. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. It was a very solemn service, and it was well received, actually.
Good.
And I really like the aspect of the rabbi saying the prayers, and it is a reminder that although we talked about the Holocaust that happened in the Second World War, there has been many other incidents ever since, and we are mindful as well of the situation as we have today in Ukraine. So, you know, war is always around the corner, as it were, and we've got to be mindful. When it comes to the education, I think our children today are blessed with a lot of information that can be gleaned from the internet and from the libraries, books, and I think it's a subject that should be studied in every school. And I know it is on the curriculum, but let us not forget. Let us not forget the horrors that happened in the past. And let's make sure these horrors never happen again. But it was very solemn, and I do appreciate those who brought the service. Although it was online, it was very well produced, and actually you couldn't help at the end of it to have a tear in your eye. Let's remember those who died in these occasions, and let's remember that, and it's our children, isn't it, of Northumberland, who will probably see such things happen again, but let's hope that they never happen again. Thank you, Chair.
There are very, very good guidelines from the Holocaust Memorial Day Trust, which always includes the other genocides. To me, the Holocaust is a happening that is specific, but those genocides are also very important to remember, and increasingly those countries, or those people who had to escape from those countries, are now speaking on their behalf. But thank you for your thoughts. Okay.
Chair, could I just add? Sorry.
Yes.
I was, just to note what you were saying at the start there, Deanna, I was really concerned that I didn't hear any thing in terms of being able to pass on to schools and things like that, because I had been minuted that information would be passed on with regard to the Holocaust, and then we would pass that on to schools so that they could then mark it. But if we don't give them that enough time to do that, then that is an issue. So it would be really good if that could be noted and then passed on to the local authority for next year.
Thank you.
And I will pass that on to the people, the organisers. The day I found out what was happening was the day I sent the information to Rebecca to send to you. So, to be honest, I found out maybe 2 days beforehand.
Right, thank you.
So, yes, I'll pass on the feedback and we'll endeavour to do something.
I mean, the rabbi's input was the same input for all the local authorities. It's actually on film. He's not my personal rabbi, but he's our rabbi, and is always happy to be involved. Has anybody got anything else to say? I don't want to take up too much time on that. So the urgent business, again, we can look at. Do I have to sign this, or do I sign your copy?
If you sign that one for now, I can swap them over.
Right. Okay, next item is disclosures of interest. And I don't think there are any. I never know quite what they are. Right, and right. Kaz, can we have some updates?
Absolutely.
If there are any.
I was going to say that most of what I will update you on, I'm deferring to the Agreed Syllabus Conference meeting straight after this. Almost all of the work that I've done in the last month since our last meeting has been to do with the syllabus. So I'll update you on that. I've had a meeting with RE today, and then we can talk further on that. I've done a little bit of kind of emailing, replied to schools who've asked questions about their curriculum overviews and that sort of thing. So I've done informal support like that. But I've been waiting for this meeting before I then set the next network meeting so that I can update teachers and hopefully get a group of teachers who then want to work and work towards our launch if we can make our decision. So most of what I'll say at the Agreed Syllabus Conference, unless anybody has any questions.
Has anybody got any questions for Caroline? Thank you. Now we all get the SACRE letter, newsletter, which is very interesting. You're sending it out as an email now? Yes, it comes as an email, doesn't it? Which I get. And so that's item 5. Item 6, the action plan from 2021.
Chair, could I just make a comment about the...
Sorry?
Could I just make a comment about the newsletter?
Yes, please do.
Just to compliment those people who were involved, I sent some information through about the new publications around understanding humanism and the teaching materials that go with it. And within a couple of days, it was part of the newsletter and it had been sent out. So it was very pleasing to see that happen.
Thank you. So can we have the details about the action plan, please, Dave?
Yes, thank you, Chair. You'll find the action plan in your pack. As Kaz said, it's not been particularly long since we last met, actually. But we are making progress on many of the objectives. Obviously, the desire to have an updated syllabus by January 2022 has passed us by, but we are well into the process now of working through that. And obviously, a number of those objectives will follow once we've got full agreement. We will be able to monitor results at Key Stages 4 and 5 again this year, assuming exams go ahead as they are planned. The expectation is that they will go ahead, so we will be able to do that for the first time in a number of years. In terms of monitoring provision of collective worship, we've sort of stepped back a little bit from our monitoring role, simply because schools have been so snowed under with COVID, bubbles, all that kind of thing. But as things get back to a semblance of normality, we will start that process again. The newsletter which is just the SACRE newsletter itself. You'll remember we've moved that online, and that continues to be available for anyone to view. It was mentioned at the last meeting as to whether we had any idea of how well read it was. As of today, there have been 113 views. 83 of those have glanced at it. 14 of them have read it quickly. 16 have had a deep read. Whatever might constitute a deep read, 16 of them have done so. Is that all you do? And that is since it was set up. So, to be perfectly frank, that's dire. If you consider that there's probably something new on it every week, every fortnight, I would hope that people were looking at it a little bit more regularly than they are. So I still think we have an issue with RE teachers knowing that it actually exists. Mm-hmm. So it's there, it works, it doesn't cost us anything as the previous one used to. It costs a little bit of my time, but to be frank, it's to put something on takes minutes. But I still think we have quite an issue in ensuring that people understand that it's there and available.
Could it be because of the situation that we've gone through in the past couple of years, reading that newsletter would not be high on teachers' priority list?
It could well be, but we need to start that process of, as I was talking to chairs of governors this morning about the fact that we need to start to get back to normal, whatever normal might be, and business as usual. So, yes, you know, having professional development high on the agenda of our RE teachers.
Yes.
They should be thinking about that a little bit more now, I hope. So there is certainly some work to do on ensuring that people know that it exists, know where to find it. Obviously, Kaz can do that through her networks. I'll ensure that the school improvement team mention it when they go to schools. And on the Northumberland Education website, which I also run, there is a link from the front page of there as well. So anybody who goes onto the front page of the school improvement team's website would be able to see the link straight to the newsletter at the moment. That will be on there for another week or so before it gets removed and replaced with something else.
Has anybody got any comments they want to make about that? Anybody? Any ideas as to how to promote it? Not easy. I think they've got so used to actually having a physical one, and it was always very colourful, and it was the envy of other SACREs. But, you know, we have to think of the pennies and pounds, as it were.
Yeah, I agree with David. It's a bit disappointing that so few have taken it up, David, isn't it?
Well, it's a question of do they know it's there?
Well, yeah.
I mean, it's linked from exactly the same place on the council website as the last 10 years of newsletters have been. And you're right. Having a physical copy like we used to was nice, but again, we don't know how many schools printed it out, gave it to their RE leads, put it in the staff room. We just don't know that. But yes, we definitely need to ensure that more people read it. I'm not going to embarrass Claire and say, Claire, as a teacher, have you looked at it? But it would be interesting to ask a number of teachers if they even knew it existed. And that's part of our role, is to get out there and make sure that they do understand.
Is it possibly a role for the communications team? I mean, you've got loads on, haven't you, Dave? The Northumberland's communication team and the way that they could sort of be involved with the whole social sort of aspect of it.
We could. It's been on the Facebook page, the school improvement team's Facebook page. As I say, it's on the Northumberland Education website, which does receive hundreds and hundreds of hits every day. And that's the site where school leaders, school teachers, we hope that's their first port of call for any school information. I think we need to look into the whites of RE teachers' eyes, to be honest, and say to them, do you know where it is? And show them if necessary.
It's a shame for you if you've done all this work, isn't it?
We haven't had that privilege in the last couple of years. You know, previously we've had conferences where we've been able to talk to them and show them. So once, I think it will be able to tie in with the plans that Kaz and I have for the agreed syllabus. But yes, anybody who's in school or speaks to RE teachers, please let them know where it is and that it's well worth a deep read, rather than a quick read or even a glance.
Councillor, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, yeah. I think it might be wise to have a word with the comms team, get their advice on how to promote it. They might have a solution to it. Secondly, we talked about the printed version. Would it be possible just to send a letter to the actual teachers with the link, as it were, so they can find it from the letter? Because what I understand is you might get about 30 emails a day, and you prioritise those emails. You see a newsletter, you might just flip by that and not bother to read it. That's my simple understanding of how people work in these days. But I just wonder if that's the solution. A letter with the details on how to access this newsletter. We could do that to start with, and once the teachers get into the habit of going to find the newsletter, and do they sign up for the newsletter, by the way? Do they actually go on and sign up to get the newsletter? These are, like, I'm just thinking outside the box, because, you know, you yourself, if you use the internet, you sign up for a newsletter, you choose what you want to read. So are the teachers doing that? Do they sign up? I want to read that newsletter, therefore I sign up for it. Yeah.
They don't need to sign up for it. It's just available to anybody at any time.
Yeah.
And because it's updated as often as information comes in, if we were to contact those who'd signed up every time it was updated, they may start to get, you know,
Right.
pretty irritated by the number of alerts that they got. But we'll certainly consider sending a letter. Thank you.
Okay.
Is there anything else on the action plan?
One final thing, Chair, that is the final point about sending a delegate to the annual conference. We have had requests to send delegates this year, and I'm more than happy to fund those.
That's great.
Or places as we decide.
And who's going?
That depends on the bun fight that we might have later on.
Yes, Councillor.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a quick comment on one part of the action plan, on the second page. It says that we will offer advice to schools about how they can reduce the number of pupils withdrawn from collective worship. Now, it's only my personal opinion, but I don't think we ought to be doing that. I think we should be advising schools on how they can communicate with parents and pupils that pupils can be withdrawn from collective worship, and leave the decision up to those parents and pupils.
I've lost it.
Halfway down,
Yeah.
the second column of the second page.
I'm happy to,
Page 8,
I'm happy
Page
to
8, Diana.
amend that if committee members are in agreement.
Sorry, what did you say, Dave?
I'm happy to amend that statement if committee members are in agreement.
Hang on, read the constitution first.
Could I ask how many pupils are withdrawn from collective worship? Do we have that information?
As far as we know this year, none.
I do think it's essential to respect parents' rights, but not all schools and not all parents understand the law around collective worship, so it's important that everybody's working on the basis of accurate information. But respecting that decision, I agree with entirely.
Could I add, there's the wonderful dilemma that schools then face. What do we do with the children who are not in collective worship? And good guidance needs to be given for that. It's out there, but how schools communicate that and understand that is something we would have to think about too.
Any other comments on that?
It would just be useful to clarify the comment you're making. I didn't quite hear what you said.
Well, it's interesting that if no pupils are being withdrawn from collective worship, it's interesting that we have this statement here in the first place saying that we hope to reduce the number. I didn't realise that no students were currently being withdrawn. But my point was that should we be trying to reduce the number of pupils withdrawn from collective worship? Or should we just be supporting the schools to make it clear to parents and pupils that pupils can be withdrawn from collective worship, and then but remaining neutral and stepping back and letting those parents and those pupils decide whether they wish to be withdrawn?
I suppose that depends on what we think the role of SACRE is. One of the statutory duties of SACRE is to support and promote collective worship. I suppose I would be considering what I would rather do than remove that is to offer advice to schools on how to make collective worship collective and invitational, so that no parents would feel uncomfortable with their children taking part in the collective worship, because it would be inclusive of everybody. Is probably the perspective that I would take on that. I guess we would need to check our constitution in terms of what our duties are before we could remove that statement.
We are going to discuss a slightly revised constitution later in the agenda, so we can bring that point up again there, I think.
Yes, Chris, go on.
At the moment, our minds have obviously taken up very much with religious education and the syllabus, but once that is in train, collective worship is certainly an issue worthy of our attention. Who is it for and why, and how inclusive is it, and what we're going to do about that?
I mean, I suspect there will be varying reasons as to why they don't want to be involved in collective worship. And it's how you sort that out, basically. Pardon me, Stuart.
Thank you. I think the key word here is worship. And what I'd be interested in doing, I support Councillor Morfitt's suggestion about looking at this, is to remove the word worship, because while it's there, it's not inclusive. It can't be inclusive, because for some children and their parents, worship is not something that they wish to do. Worshipping anything.
Thank you.
I think we might need to check whether or not the phrase collective worship is something that we are expected to use in the DfE. I couldn't tell you.
The collective
I
worship
think we've
is
got to be
what
very careful here, because the rules and that are laid down for us in regard to
Right.
collective worship, so we need to be very careful.
So the legislation calls it collective worship,
Yes.
so we don't have an option in the same way that it's called religious education in statute. Whether we agree or disagree, we don't have an option, unfortunately, to change the name. Stuart. The legislation does say that children are given the opportunity to worship rather than they worship. So those children who, I understand your point, but those children who don't want to worship are not being forced to worship. They are in a space where there is opportunity for reflection, and I don't think that reflection and worship are the same thing, actually. So again, that's what, the point I was making about making sure teachers understand how to make collective worship inclusive for everybody. I know that the name won't be such, but in many schools it's not called collective worship, but in legislation that's what it's called.
Joyce, did you want to say something?
Just to add that there's been no guidance officially from the government since 1994 on collective worship, which is symptomatic of what a very complex issue it is that no one's really prepared to touch. But making life as easy as possible for our heads to obey the law and provide a good experience for children without ramming Christianity down any child's throat or religion down any child's throat is really, really important. It has to be respectful.
Yeah. Thank you. Can we move on to the SACRE subcommittee? Are you going to take the lead on that, Dave, or is Joyce? I'm thinking of the right one.
I think I might ask Joyce to lead on the idea, and then I can talk about the terms of reference, if that's okay.
I think the idea is simply because of the position we found ourselves in the last 2 years when SACRE hasn't been able to meet in person. And I think if you want to generate enthusiasm and ideas and for a group of people to come together and work together, being in the same room is really very, very important. We are a statutory body, and the last meeting I was at, and I know I haven't been a member of SACRE for very long, but that is the first time the meeting has actually been quorate. And I think that's a very serious matter. So we need to find ways of having members present, having a lot of members active and involved, and having an appropriate level of discussion and debate so that we really understand the issues that are facing teachers in our schools. It's a very long time since I was an RE teacher. I think I've got a reasonable idea of what goes on in schools, but it's a rapidly changing situation. And I think all members of SACRE, because we have this huge responsibility, we really do need to be very active, very involved. And so I thought I might be able to save Dave quite a lot of work, so that instead of him having to work with CAS on this action plan on their own, it might be a good idea for SACRE members to come together and say, well, actually, we could do this, we could do that, why don't we think about this? And see if amongst ourselves we could generate ideas of making SACRE more effective as an organisation and the impact that could have on the quality of religious education in our schools.
Thank you. Dave, do you want to?
Thank you. In agenda item 9, you'll see some proposed terms of reference. I did speak to the legal team who said that they'd had a quick look and they said as long as the committee were happy, then they could be adopted as the terms of reference for the proposed subcommittee. So, are there any comments on those terms of reference on page 21 of your agenda pack? The idea of you saving me some work, Joyce, is a lovely idea. Thank you.
Can I just say, this is an excellent idea, please. Let's proceed with it.
So if everybody's happy, Chair, then I think we just need a chair of the subcommittee, do we not?
This is quite similar to how we operated previously, David, in many ways when with Phil. We operated as a subcommittee before we became the ESC, you know, had a lot of ideas and thoughts and information was put in place for people to discuss. That didn't appear to happen so much this time. And so I think it's useful to have something like that.
Excellent. Thank you, Ted. So as it says in the proposed terms of reference, Joyce will be the chair and the secretary, which is very generous of you.
Well, I think it's going to be a very small meeting. You know, there could just be 4 people there if it's one person from each committee. Mm-hmm. So I don't think there's going to be that much difficulty in controlling the meeting. I expect people will behave themselves, etc. But I am willing to do that. What I should have done was include my email. We just need if we want to go ahead with the idea, people need to be able to identify themselves as willing participants, and for those names to be passed on to me, or people
I'm sure Dave or Rebecca can do that.
So it is rather a short time scale, but I thought if we agreed we should just get on with it and sort it this term in readiness for a SACRE meeting for next term. So it is fairly short and sharp. So we would need to set the committee up next week in order for it to begin work the week after.
Do we have any volunteers? Chris? If they're online, which I think that's what you're proposing, I'm happy to be on that subcommittee. And Ted? it would be good to have a teacher representative. I'm not looking at you, Claire, honestly. Oh, right, thank you, Andrew. Sorry, I wasn't ignoring you.
If there's no other teachers prepared, I'm happy to pitch in, yeah.
Right, and they're going to be online, then we're not actually physically at meetings, so that should make it slightly easier for you.
Easy for putting out from Berwick.
So,
Stuart was behind me.
I'm volunteering as well.
right,
And we need a councillor if we're going to have each committee represented.
thank you, councillor.
Thank you.
Rebecca, you'll send the email addresses of everybody. So we need to, I think possibly not, now if you could send out a list of dates that suit you and times, early evening.
I think whatever time is best for you, Andrew, you're the person who's... so we could have this conversation amongst the participants and we'll sort that out. But hopefully we'll have a first virtual meeting the week beginning the 14th of February.
Right, which is...
Very soon.
Very soon, yes. Well, thank you for that. And I think that, you know, that is great. The draft... so are we happy that we've finished with that topic? And the draft SACRE report for 2021, and I believe the format has changed.
The format has changed.
Is it easier?
The format has changed, and you should have been emailed a copy.
Yes, I think we were.
And so that format that you will have received should follow the new format as proposed by the national body. It's really there for you to have a read and to provide me with any feedback that, as you see fit, please. Obviously, you've not had it, you didn't get it with the papers, so we're not expecting it. So, but if I could have any feedback in the next couple of weeks, I'd be very grateful. Direct to me, and I shall make any changes as necessary. I've started redrafting it myself today, and I'm only on page 2, and I've found quite a few already, so I'm sure there would be plenty that you could
Would it be
support.
Worthwhile, Rebecca, sending it out again, just to jog our memories?
Yes, if
Could
you
you
would,
do that?
Rebecca, please.
Thank you.
Could I raise one question which is also relevant to the action plan? Do we have no information at all about exam results from last year? None. The children have, they've got exam results.
They have exam results, but they didn't sit exams in the traditional sense. But that information was not shared by schools to the local authority.
Really?
Yeah. Because we haven't asked for it because we decided not to the last 2 years. So I did put some national figures into the report, but we will from this summer get back to be able to see the levels of uptake of GCSE and A level.
Because there was workforce data produced by NATRE, the National Association of Teachers of RE, and so you can see from that how many hours schools have devoted to religious education. And this is information that is sent to the Department for Education, so it's official information. And there's a very patchy amount in Northumberland schools. Some have gone up, some have gone down. One says there's an astonishing 12% of the curriculum devoted to RE in year 11, which sounds extraordinarily good. And there are a number where there's no time at all in year 11, which presumably would then have an impact on how many children were entered for exams, but we'll never know the answer because we haven't got the data.
Not from last year or the
Right.
year before, no,
Yeah.
but we certainly can look at that again this year. I think that workforce data is really interesting
It is.
and concerning at the same time.
Yeah.
I know that there has been a very positive impact of some new RE teachers at certain secondary schools in the county, and therefore numbers at GCSE are starting to rise. But by the same token, I know that there are other schools where there is very little RE taught, or if it is taught, it's taught on drop-down days, maybe once a term.
Thank you.
Thank you both for that. And it also depends how RE is presented in the syllabus, whether it's blocked against geography and history. And the marketing, you know, with open evenings, as to what the value of RE is, and I know teachers are very concerned about that, and some are very successful and some just aren't, and I think also, if I dare say this, the cooperation of the SLT. So thanks for that detail. Have we looked at the terms of reference?
With regard to that,
Sorry, Paul.
With regard to that, though, I think schools are very aware that Ofsted look at RE within their deep dives, and the Church of England schools, RE is inspected as a separate area of their science inspection, but the science inspection inspectors at the moment are not commenting upon actual attainment within RE from the previous year. They're looking very much at the curriculum and the way that supports children's progress through RE. But I think schools are very aware of the importance of RE.
I think that's very true, Paul. The discussion around those schools where RE is not so prevalent tends to be in the secondary schools, and our Ofsted haven't actually completed a deep dive into RE in Northumberland as far as I'm aware. Having said that, I'm sure there'll be one tomorrow or next week, which might be just what we need.
So we've actually done the terms of reference, haven't we? Unless anybody wants to add anything else.
This is slightly different, Chair. So
right.
There were terms of reference for the SACRE subcommittee.
Oh, sorry, my apologies.
Rather than terms of reference, it made say constitution. You may remember that at our last meeting, or it may have been the meeting before, we agreed that that Stuart would be moved from a co-opted representative to Committee A. As a result of that, we needed to amend the Constitution. And as a result of me going back to look at the Constitution and seeing how long ago it had been written and not revisited, I thought it was just an opportune moment to revisit the Constitution. So that's what precipitated it. I have written it. It has been through the legal team, which was why there were some delays. They were rather busy. They made very minor adjustments to the wording, and what they have agreed is what has been presented to you. My request would be that you take it away and digest it, and again, if you can provide any feedback to me within the next 4 weeks, please, so that we can revise it and bring it back to the next SACRE meeting for potential adoption.
Yeah, I was surprised that we didn't get a feedback from against item 63 of those minutes, Dave, which said that we'd be advised, members would be kept informed about what the outcome was in regard to the humanist position. So the first time we've seen it is now in the Constitution, you know, but I don't think we were advised of the outcome of that action until now.
Sorry, which one?
It's
Ted?
it's item 63 from the last meeting, which I wasn't at, but the members were to be advised. Once an agreement has been made, members would be informed. We haven't been informed of that, as far as I'm aware.
Right, well...
Apart just now.
Yeah, well, yes, so, as I say, this came through earlier in the week, back from legal. So yes, the urgent business said, members noted that legal services were looking into the Constitution in regard to moving the humanist member to Committee A. Once an agreement had been made, members would be informed. So if you take it, Ted, as I'm informing you that they have looked at it, they have agreed that it is constitutionally sound, and therefore the revised Constitution is what's been presented to you. But as I say, I'm more than happy to take your feedback in the next 4 weeks, if you would, please.
Could I just raise one point? I will email you about sort of minor details, but one of the things you've said is that every year there should be one SACRE meeting held in a school. And my experience in the past and other places is that if you do that, attendance at SACREs drops, because people are going somewhere different. They don't necessarily know where they're going. SACRE members, in my experience, have liked being in one place. I do think involvement of schools is really important, but putting that in the Constitution makes it a legal requirement or working requirement. Perhaps instead we could, possibly once a year, get somebody from a school to come and give a presentation about what they're doing in RE that's really innovative or exciting, which would mean we would have the benefit of knowing what's happening in schools without all of us having to go to, I don't know, Hayden Bridge, or that's the farthest point I can think of in Northumberland, which would be a real schlep for all of us, I think. So it's whether that should be a formal part of the Constitution or not.
And that's exactly the kind of feedback that I would be happy to take, and happy to take your views on. It is something that we used to do. We have done previously.
But I think, as Joyce says, because Northumberland's so widely spread, it's the physical of getting there from us all coming from different points. So, I mean, Newcastle, it's much easier. And ideally, that would be good, but I think from a practical point of view, I don't think it's possible. Yes, Councillor.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. We're well used with travelling in Northumberland. It's if you have to attend a meeting in, say, the south, east, north, or the north or the west of Northumberland, it's not a problem. Many officers and councillors are well used to travelling the county. I don't know if you know, but the county is 110 miles long from one end to the other. We're used to it, so it's not. This is the geography of where we live, and we're proud of it. We don't mind. So, urban areas like Newcastle and North Tyneside, Gateshead and South Tyneside, yep, they don't have to travel far. But Northumberland, you got to have a different mindset to live here. About 80% of the population actually live in the southeast. And but to enjoy Northumberland and to appreciate Northumberland, you need to go west and north as well. So I see no objection in travelling in Northumberland, Chair. Okay.
Thank you.
I should be on the tourist board.
David, would you repeat what your deadline was for feedback? Sorry, I didn't quite hear that.
4 weeks, please. Ted.
4 weeks, thank you.
Thank you.
Are we happy to move on to urgent business? Joyce?
I'm just looking for what I wrote down that I wanted to ask, because I can no longer remember what I thought was really important. Can I just raise 2 or 3 very small points? Could we always have introductions at the beginning of SACRE? I know you've done it today, Diana, but it doesn't always happen.
Yeah.
So if it's an agenda item, we could have apologies and introductions.
Yes.
I think that would be a really good thing. Can I ask if urgent business is the same as any other business? Because if members want to raise a matter that isn't urgent but is important, how do they do that? So it's just ways in which we can raise things. And just a little point of information, because in the Bulletin 29 that SACRE issued, they said that SACREs are not council committees. And I was intrigued by that, because if we're not a council committee, I don't quite know what we are, because we're set up by the council, we're funded by the council, we're served by council officers. And because I know her, I emailed Linda Rudge, who's the chair of SACRE, and said, can you explain this to me? It just sounds to me as if we're in a sort of no man's land. And she said, that's exactly where we are, in a no man's land. And there are disparities across the country. So some SACREs are treated as council committees, but we are a council, not a committee, in terms of our title. So different things are happening in different parts of the country, which I think could affect, well, it affects the political status of religious education nationally. And so SACRE has asked the Department for Education, I think some months ago, for clarification on this. Clearly, the department won't think this is an urgent issue, but we are the statutory bodies, and I think it's important that our position and our status is clear. So it may be that there will be information coming through about what we are in relation to the council, whether we are independent.
Well, in the Constitution, if you look at 3.1, SACRE will have a separate identity to and is independent from the local authority. So and that's why we've had to meet here physically, isn't it? Because we're regarded as a committee, although we don't call ourselves a committee.
Yeah, it's just ambiguous.
I know, it's an anomaly. So, well, if you hear any more from your colleague, perhaps you can share it with us at the next meeting or at one of the subcommittee meetings. But the local authority, by one of the Education Acts, has to have a SACRE. I can't remember which Education Act it was.
88.
Yeah, 88, yeah. Does anybody want to say anything else?
Well, that was set up in 1988, wasn't it, when the LEAs were given the authority to actually set up the SACRE groups. So they have the authority to actually set the group up. And therefore, in the end analysis, they have the end say on things, don't they?
I mean, we get our funding, don't we, from the local authority? Sorry, were you going to say something, Rebecca?
No,
When the empowerment went back way back to I think it was 1944 or something like that.
Yeah.
So far back, you know.
Yes.
just to let members know that we have had two committee members leave as well. So Mariam Khan's left and Mrs. Seymour has also left the committee.
So that's the urgent business you're talking about. This has been a problem with Northumberland. It's the representation of the faith communities and non-faith communities.
Kaz has done some detective work and we now have contact details for the national bodies for those faith groups. So unbeknown to Rebecca, then she's going to do a piece of work over the next couple of weeks to contact the national bodies to ask for replacement representatives for those members, those committee members who have resigned. Yes.
Right.
Is it possible, just say, Chair, that I'm on a Zoom call now with the Director for the Church of England, the diocese. So Chris already mentioned about the Church of England representatives, so I will put it out to them about the potential for finding some new representatives for the Church of England to try and get to boost our numbers as well. So I'll take that on.
Thank you. Yes, I can't remember what was suggested in the new constitution.
4.
How many there will be? Is it 4?
4 in Group
yes.
B. Yeah.
That's right.
It's lovely to have Claire here, but it's the teacher representation that we also need.
And interestingly, one of the reasons for having these meetings at 4 o'clock is to make it, hope to make it easy
sorry,
for
Andrew
the
as
teachers.
well.
And obviously Andrew travels a long way to get here from school.
Downhill all the way.
And the reason given by one of the absent committee members today is the fact that it is 4 o'clock in an afternoon that they cannot make. So, you know, it is difficult, but we will do. Rebecca and I will do what we can to ensure.
Yeah, I'm quite sure you do, because it's in their interests, you know, to be part of it, even if it's just. Sorry, that didn't mean it like that, but you know, they can then share what's going on with their schools or their unions, you know, and so on. Thank you. So we've got the date of the next meeting, which is the 27th of July. It seems miles away.
27th of July, is that in the school summer holidays?
Pardon?
27th of July in the school summer holidays.
Yes,
so you might not get all your
thinking.
teacher reps. Hopefully they're relaxing.
On a beach somewhere.
Oh, I hope so. Because they worked hard. They are working hard.
Yes, that is the first week of the summer holidays, so we may need to look to move that
Yeah.
to
We
a
usually
week
meet in June.
or a fortnight earlier. it'll depend on other council.
Yeah, I appreciate
meetings.
that.
That will be the issue. So Rebecca and I will look to move that to the previous week or a week before that. So the last 2 weeks of term. And we'll be in contact as soon as we can.
Right, I would very much like to move on to the agreed syllabus conference so that we still remember. Thank you, Paul.
Apologies,
Thank
sorry,
you very much.
but I will come back.
So that can be looked at before I have to leave. So I'm handing over to Caroline.
Great, thank you, Chair. Welcome to the meeting of the Agreed Syllabus Conference. Thanks for coming. It's lovely to be Court, which is absolutely brilliant, and it's lovely to have some teachers. Thank you for coming, because that's been an issue, so that's great to have teachers with us tonight, because that's what we're doing this work for teachers. So the more teacher input we can have, then the better. Apologies for absence will obviously be the same as the SACRE members there, Rebecca, if they could be noted. Okay, so if we start by looking at the minutes from our last meeting, which was immediately after the SACRE meeting on the 8th of December. Are there any comments to be made on the first page of the minutes? So that's page 28 of your pack. Or on the second page. Or on the final page, which is the very last page of your pack.
Well, first of all, can I just say thank you for researching, all these different syllabi, because that must have taken up quite a lot of your time.
Thank you, Diana. It did. Okay, so are we happy to take those as a true record of the meeting? Yes? Brilliant.
Again, the apologies were tendered for that meeting. My apologies were tendered for that meeting, but they're not included.
Thank you, Ted. Okay, are there any declarations of interest? I don't know of any. No. Okay, great. So if we go on to item 4, which is really the main body of the meeting. So at the last meeting, we obviously discussed the syllabus options, but at that time you didn't have copies of them. And so you went away and discussed in your committees, and all 4 committees agreed with the recommendation for syllabus B, which was great. Committee A and B contacted me, Committee C and D contacted Dave. Committee A had various comments to make about the syllabus, which I'll come on to in a moment. But in principle, all 4 committees agreed on syllabus B. So that does move us forward from where we were a year ago, which is great. My task then off the back of last meeting was to contact RE Today, where we were potentially going to source a syllabus and ask them your questions really, and about what the scope was for changes. And I also then engaged with RE Today about the comments that Committee A had contacted me about as well. And some members of Committee A as well had given specific feedback from their worldview position, and I have contacted 2 of the 3 of those, and I'll get on to the 3rd about that. So in terms of, please do, if you've got questions, please do just ask, but I'll just talk you through roughly briefly what the conversation entailed with RE Today, and then we can see where we're at from there and whether you're happy to proceed with that. And then if you are, then we can make the plan about what can happen next. So one of the reservations from Committee A was about the aim of RE in the syllabus. See, previously, those of us in the working group, which had not been Corit, but had been a working group for the Agreed Syllabus Conference, had worked together to come up with an aim that we wanted RE for our RE syllabus in Northumberland. But the aim in the Model B that we would potentially purchase is different. And I did discuss the option of whether we would be able to swap the aims in. And at the moment, that wouldn't be possible, I'm afraid, in the sense that changing the aim will then have too much of an impact on the rest of the document, and therefore will be basically a new piece of work, which right now we don't have the time or budget for. So I would, whilst that is probably disappointing to some of you, I would recommend that we think to the future in terms of right now we're not going to get everything that we want, but working forward towards the future, hopefully we will get more of what we want. So that was the key thing about the aim. In terms of what they can offer us, obviously, is a syllabus that's ready to go now, that we can, what they need from us are so a foreword and an introduction. Then hopefully when the new census data comes out, we can have updated census data, and it would be really great to provide some local photos and things like that would localise it more to us. Obviously we can, as I'd suggested, for those members who were keen to have localised units, that is something that we are able to do, but that will require SACRE members to commit to do that work. So if that's, I know that was something that some of the councillors were keen on, and some of the Worldview members as well. So that is possible, but obviously any work that goes into that will ultimately delay us being able to launch. So we would need to decide on whether we want to do that pre-launch, and if so, who's going to do the work, how long they're going to take to do it, and so on. There were a few comments from committee members about the Ofsted Framework, and the one that was given in the draft that we had was referring to a previous Ofsted Framework. Just to reassure you that in the updated version that we would be purchasing, it would have a reference to the new Ofsted Framework. Members also asked whether they could have an online or have a copy, of the full syllabus. Obviously, we were working off a very small extract of a much larger document. And I've asked if we could have a copy of the full document so that you can see all of it, to have a look at before we go any further with that. And he sent me, from RE today, they've sent me over a link of an online copy with a password that you can then access and have a look at. And I know that there were folk who were interested in looking particularly at their own worldview within that as well. So that would give you the opportunity to do that. You can request changes in terms of if there are inaccuracies, but just to be really clear from their side of things, there's no guarantee that they would be able to make all of the changes that you might request. When I raised some of the questions that some Worldview members had raised about things that they would like to see changed, then the response was that actually such and such a Worldview member from a different SACRE had said a different thing, and that is why that's been put like that in the current version of the syllabus. But if there are things that you consider to be inaccuracies from your Worldview, then we can definitely put those to RE today. Just bearing in mind that obviously all of us come from a perspective, and that we're trying to teach as broadly within each of those worldviews as we can. There are other bits and pieces that aren't included in the syllabus that folk raised, but that will be provided as extra guidance on top of the syllabus. I think one of the things that we talked about previously and teachers had fed back from the current syllabus is that it's quite unwieldy and it's very long, and they weren't sure where to find things and whatever. So the guidance will go in a separate section that will give them guidance about worldviews approach, about curriculum development, about planning approaches, and Ofsted information on those sorts of things that then teachers can refer to. And again, you'll be able to read all of this. Okay, just going through everything just to make sure I cover all the bits and pieces. Yes, one of the questions that was raised by members, which I think is absolutely valid, and I raised it myself with Ari today, was about Key Stage 4. And so the current syllabus, sorry, not the current, I mean the model syllabus that we've got here, says the expectation is that all students will follow a GCSE course at Key Stage 4. We obviously know that that is not the case. Well, unfortunately, in Northumberland, not enough curriculum time is given over at Key Stage 4 from lots of schools to do that. At the moment, we have schools who are doing all sorts of rotations or doing PSHE and RE together and not meeting statutory duties for either. So we've got, we need to be practical about what we can provide. So I asked them about whether they have anything from Key Stage 4 perspective. At the moment they don't, because they always recommend a GCSE course, which I can understand, but they don't have anything that is sort of there and ready to go. So that will be up to us to think about as SACRE as to what we want to put in for Key Stage 4 and what we would want to provide. So it could be that we use some of the old short course stuff and adapt it, or it could be that we use some of the work that Durham SACRE did with Cullum, that is copyright free and whatever, or we could use some of the stuff that's in the previous syllabus and bring it down into Key Stage 4 if we wanted. And the same goes with sixth form. Obviously, for those of you who don't know, that children who are in a school, not a sixth form college, but are in a school during the sixth form, it is a statutory duty that they also cover RE, statutory RE. Again, I'm unclear as to whether that's happening in any of Northumberland schools. Just don't have that information. But again, I think it's important that we provide something so that they have guidance on how to do that. So those, I think, are the main sort of responses to the things that were raised and asked. So really it's up to you whether you're happy to proceed, given that that's the situation that we're in. So we have a syllabus that is ready to go. It might not do everything that we want it to do right now, but it will, in my view, take us quite a few steps further along the journey than we currently are with our current provision. The provision that we have at the moment doesn't refer to Northumberland as a county in any bit of the syllabus, so it's, we're not at any disadvantage in terms of taking on this, and we do have the option, say for SACRE members, to amend units to make them Northumberland specific.
Chris?
So if we do produce some more localised units, have we got to run it past them to approve it? You know, that is okay to have that as part of the franchise, should we say?
No, I think when I was saying that in terms of delaying it would be just to get it included in the pack.
Right.
So it's not so much. I think in an ideal world we would use the same outcomes that are in, and I know that some folk don't like the term outcomes. That's the term that they use. But the same outcomes that are in the unit. I think ideally if we use those, and then the content of how that's covered could be done differently. And yes, it's not up to them to kind of rubber stamp it. But if we want it all to go out and be printed and put together in the same pack, then that would potentially delay printing and things like that. Yes.
I thought Model B was excellent. My only criticism of it was a very, very minor one. And I think I did email it to Guy. I don't know if it reached you or not. It was just that it makes a point of referring to people, of defining people by their religion, referring to people as Christians, Muslims, Jews, etc. Instead of talking about people who follow Christianity or Islam or Judaism. And I personally didn't like that. I don't think that I wouldn't want to be defined by my religion. I think it's convenient to do that, but maybe a little bit sloppy, maybe even a bit divisive to do it. It's my only comment. Otherwise, I thought it was great.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. Joyce, you want
So
to?
that is one of the written comments that Committee A put forward as well, for a whole range of reasons, but one is to give people a single identity is reductionist and potentially quite dangerous. If you only see somebody as a Muslim, not as a fellow human being, then people react to that. So I think it's unfortunate that the syllabus has chosen to talk about people rather than the traditions that they follow. But I think Committee A was prepared to accept it in the circumstances with a view that this is a compromise position and that in future I think the world of RE is going to move towards worldviews, towards traditions, and away from I am a Muslim, I am a Christian. So I think this syllabus will naturally develop into something quite different in the future. But it is certainly something we were very conscious of. And
yeah, I think we recognise that when we're talking about it. It certainly needs some work on it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We're not going to have the time to do that in this instance.
No, but the next one. Next syllabus.
Great. Thank you, Joyce. Sorry, that is one of the I did raise that one also, that point, sorry. So thank you, Councillor Morvett, for raising that. I did speak to RE today about that very thing, because that was one of the comments written in Committee A. No, I didn't receive anything from your committee, sorry. And so we'd had that discussion about, because I know Committee A had sort of talked about whether that was a kind of old world religions paradigm or whether it was anyway, so that I think there's a fundamental disagreement probably there about what exactly is happening, and by referring to, I think there's a wider discussion there about decolonising the curriculum as well. So obviously not referring to people who follow the Hindu tradition as, not referring to that tradition as Hinduism, but referring to it as Sanatana Dharma or Durham. And some of those questions as well that I would want to discuss with teachers. I think, whilst, again, I'm really pleased to hear that it's not a deal breaker in terms of making a decision, but I think for where our teachers are right now, this syllabus will be a significant leap. I think from what I've heard at the network meetings from those teachers who attend, and I think that this will really push our teachers on and will be a real challenge for them in a positive way. And yeah, we can work towards ultimately the worldviews. You know, I think you're absolutely right. We decided that as a group that we were happy to say that that's the direction of travel, that religion and worldviews and the Commission's recommendations and so on. But obviously right now that project, that piece of work with the RE Council and so on is only sort of halfway through. So in a few years' time, once they've done that piece of work and they've found out all the answers for us, then we can look to it. But I absolutely agree. I think that right now we're not going to get everything that we want, but I think this is going to move us further down the journey. So thank you. Yes, Joyce.
Could you give us an idea of the timeline you're working to?
That's a great question. So some of that will depend on SACRE members. So if the decision from Agreed Syllabus Conference members is that you want to personalise some units, that will be a decision that you will make as to how long that's going to take. If we leave that aside, the syllabus could be ready within a month in terms of getting it to go. So what we need to provide for them is a forward from the chair and a forward from somebody from the local authority. We need to write an introduction that will personalise it to Northumberland. And ideally, I'd like to wait for the next census data, so which will be 31st of March, rather than putting the 2011 data in. I think it would be good to have the most recent data. I think it would be optimistic to think we'd have it out before the 31st of March anyway, but and to provide some local photographs. So, you know, if we were to say that work would take us a couple of months, then, you know, that's really as long as it would take. So it's the time it will take for us to check, for members to check and be happy, and any errors and things like that to be dealt with, and then to get through that list. So I guess I'm really looking at Dave in terms of what he's thinking a launch, and then how long that would take to gather and sort that out and all of that.
Yeah, I mean,
Because it has to go
ideally,
through council as well.
ideally this will be in schools from September and being taught from September. That would be the ideal, which means we need to give schools ample time to prepare. We need a launch. We need some follow-up training and support. So it would be quite intensive in the summer term, but if we work from 1st of September deadline for it to be taught, I would think we need to have the launch before half term in the summer term to give them time enough to start to plan, prepare. So time is going to be quite tight, I think.
Because before we can do any of that, we need to get sign off from the council.
Absolutely right.
So that needs, so we don't, we need to know when that next meeting is, so that it can be agreed by cabinet, and then we can proceed. So before we even go that far, though, are we all happy to proceed with Model B as our way forward?
Yes, you've got lots of heads nodding.
Great, that's brilliant. Okay, that was exactly what I wanted to hear tonight. That's great. So that's fab. So now we can start to move things forward. Perhaps no, I'll rewind on that. I don't know what to say next about what.
Good.
That's great. That's great news. So I guess it'll be for Dave and I to then discuss.
Yeah, I think if we want
logistics and so on.
If we want local units in there, as Kaz said, we need to have your support in sitting down and writing them. I'm a lapsed geographer, and obviously by the sound of my accent, not from round these parts. So the local knowledge, the ability to write those local units. Kaz isn't local. You're from the wrong side of Two Rivers, are you?
I don't know what you're saying. I don't know what gave that away.
So we really will need your help to be able to do that properly. I would suggest then, if we are in agreement, that I could set up maybe a day where we could meet somewhere to start writing those bits and pieces, because that will need to be done if we want to have them included, which I think would make sense. You know, we are a county with an awful lot of history. It would be a shame not to use that in the education of the young people. Is that something that people would attend? Yep.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, David. I think it'll help them move it on, won't it?
Do you think, would there be budget for supply to release some teachers to do that as well? Thank you so much, sir.
No comment. We also, I'll pick someone. I mean, obviously, we'll look at the dates of your subcommittee meetings as well, because the last thing is that we want to coincide the two. But we'll get a planning day in as soon as we physically can at some suitable venue to start to plan what we can add in. The other question is, who do we buy the syllabus for? I think. Is that a question for the committee?
We can certainly ask that one. And Joyce, what were you wanting to?
I've forgotten what I was going to ask you.
About the local units?
Questions. It will have to be completed before it goes to cabinet, all the local variations, and will have to have been agreed by the agreed syllabus conference formally first, will it? Because I know we've agreed B, so we've now adopted a recommendation.
Mm-hmm.
If we then amend the original document, does there have to be a legal binding agreement that each committee agrees with the variations, the local variations we're going to write?
I don't think the local units.
That makes sense.
Yeah, no, it did make sense. I would say that no, we probably wouldn't need to agree again because we have agreed in principle, in the sense that those are units which are not, you know, they're not kind of integral. They're not a legal extra, I think. So I would say that probably because I'm worried about the next date of our meeting, which isn't until July, which would mean that we wouldn't be able to move forward at all. But no, I don't think so, but do you think so? Can certainly check that out. I guess my reservation would be right now is that at the moment you've only seen this much of the syllabus, and you know it's a larger document. So I suppose what we could do is do the same as we did last time and give you access for a month or so to look at the full document, and then to make sure everybody's happy to adopt the full document, not just the sample that you've seen. And
Well, I think legally that would probably be a good idea, because some SACREs have had legal challenges, and we just need to avoid any possibility of that.
yeah. So it might be that we need to call, so usually in other SACREs we would call an extraordinary meeting of the Agreed Syllabus Conference just to get that final through. And that would be, I think ideally, we would have all read the syllabus and the new additional units would be done by then. Then we would have another Agreed Syllabus Conference meeting to make that final vote. And you would talk in your committees and agree that. And then it would need to go to Cabinet. And then once that's done, we would be free to launch it. So we could begin to make some of those plans, but we would be foolish to set up a launch until we know that it's going to be approved.
Yep. So I'll work with Rebecca to look at the process for getting it through Cabinet. We can work from there.
Ladies and gentlemen, will you excuse me because I need to be downstairs for 5:30, but I need somebody to take me down because I'll get lost. Councillor said he'll take me.
Councillor Bowman's.
Oh, thank you, Councillor.
I'm glad that we managed to get that in before I but I'm sure, you know, if you want to discuss it further, please do. Thank you very much for your time, everybody.
Thanks, Deanna.
Thank you, Diana.
Okay, so are we happy with that as a kind of way forward? So I will pass on the details of the online version, and there'll be so it will give you a link that will take you to a page, and there'll be a password for you, and you just pop the password in. You won't be able to download it or print it off because it's obviously copyrighted and they don't want it to be shared, but you will be able to read it on screen. So if I send those details to Rebecca, then she can circulate those. Then if you've got any concerns, so in terms of if there are inaccuracies or errors that you want to tell me about, then if you pass them on to me, then I will take those to RE today, with the caveat that there's no guarantee. Obviously, if there's something that's completely wrong, or something that there's a spelling mistake or something, then we can deal with those. But if you could send those to me as well, then I can pass them on to RE today and we can discuss that.
Can I just ask about who we need to buy the syllabus for?
Oh yes, sorry. Dave would like to know who will buy the syllabus for. So in terms of how it works, we buy a licence for each school that we're going to provide the syllabus for. Obviously there are maintained schools and there are academies in Northumberland. And the question for you is, are we purchasing a licence for every maintained school and academy, or are we just purchasing for the maintained schools?
Or would you like me to find out from the academies and the free school whether or not they want to use it and buy them a licence accordingly, which I know provides me with work, but would possibly be a third way?
I think your proposal would be the best one. Otherwise, you could be spending a lot of unnecessary time and effort.
Yeah.
You need to know that, don't you?
Are we able to buy licences as we go along?
We would be able, I think we could add that. Yeah, I think part of the issue, my experience from teachers who've come to the networks, is that a lot of the academies don't know their legal status on RE. They don't know that they can, they don't know that they can write their own syllabus or adopt the locally agreed. So I imagine a number of them will assume that they are using the locally agreed anyway, even if they haven't formally adopted it.
Okay.
But, yeah.
Right, so all maintained schools, and I will check which academies would like to use it and purchase a licence for them accordingly. Is that what we've agreed? Yeah. Thank you.
You're going to want to see what they're buying before they're not buying it. We're buying it. Well,
what they're saying yes to.
what they're saying, yes.
But they may say yes to it. They don't. If they're an academy, they don't need to adopt it. So it could well be, yes, that they say, yes, I buy them a licence. They take one look at it and say, no, thank you.
Yeah.
That's the risk that we take. I don't necessarily know if there's a way around that, apart from showing them the syllabus in advance by...
I think for me, I would want to have an open access type approach, in the sense that I would like everybody to be invited. My experience has been in the network meetings that for so many colleagues, they've felt that they've been floundering with RE for quite a while, that the syllabus that they're currently working with, they're not too sure. I've had lots of emails over the last few weeks asking about different schemes of work and whether people should be buying X, Y and Z, and should I buy Discovery RE, or should I buy Twinkle, or should I buy whatever. And I would like to be able to provide something that will really improve the standard of RE in this county. And if that means that we buy a few extra licences and some people don't use it, then so be it. We have the budget. And then we can encourage them to use it. I'm hoping that they will hear how wonderful it is from their neighbour up the road, and then they will begin to use it. And I do have a number of academies who attend the network meetings at the moment and are theoretically using the Northumberland syllabus. So.
Thank you.
I think it's up to you about what the amount of work you want to put into contacting all of those schools individually.
Yeah, and it partly depends on the price brackets, because if the price brackets are such that buying every school in Northumberland a licence is going to work out just as economical, I might as well do that. So I will do what I can to keep the finance in check to a fair degree.
Great. Okay, are there any further comments or questions on any of that? Noted. Congratulations. Fabulous. That's absolutely brilliant. It feels really great that we've been able to make a decision and we're able to move forward and now work towards a new syllabus. And the teachers, I know, will be delighted to hear that a decision has been made, because before Christmas I wasn't able to share that. So that's brilliant. And I'm hoping that this will now give a bit of impetus for some teachers to join and talk with me and work with me to be excited about RE and to be excited about this new syllabus. Yes, Chris?
Can I share that decision with others, or are we meant to be keeping it quiet, that we're going to be taking on that syllabus?
I don't see any reason why we need to keep it quiet, but it hasn't been agreed by council.
By Cabinet,
so
yeah. In an ideal world, it would be...
Yes, provisionally we have agreed. Or
it's a provisional subject to.
It's a provisional subject to.
Great.
Because I think that may help some people's planning as well.
Yes.
You know, knowing that there will be something coming. Yeah. Assuming we can get everything lined up and ticked off before an early launch in the summer term. Good. It would, if I was a teacher of RE, I would like to know that there was something, and the timeline is that we were working towards, even though it may not be 100% agreed as yet.
Great.
Thank you.
Anything else? No? Fabulous. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for coming, and thank you for your contributions this evening.
And can I just say thank you to Claire for A, offering to come, and B, staying throughout the whole thing.
Thank you.
We do appreciate your time. Thank you.